Hello, my name is Janveer Sandhu, and I'm the Internship and Training Manager here at HomeFirst. Welcome to New Hire Training Week. This next training is on crisis response and de-escalation skills. Okay, first I want to share with you the goals of the training today. They are to develop an understanding of what happens to us as staff and also to the folks that we're working with during a crisis. How staff response plays a part in how we reduce the conflict during a crisis and how we can work with someone to resolve what's going on, to increase the safety for everyone who's involved by practicing the CPI, that stands for Crisis Prevention Intervention, tips for de-escalation. We're going to review those in the end. They're embedded through the training as well. Facilitator, if there's ever any questions, please feel free to put me on pause and attend to the questions in the room. That's very important in the learning process here today. So first, I want to start out with asking you, what is a crisis? Right? And so here's a generic definition from the dictionary. It's a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. It's a time when we can be triggered to experience events that can intensify, escalate, heighten how we would normally respond, meaning a crisis is not normal. The stress that we experience during a crisis is not something that we would normally experience in day-to-day life, and the way we respond then is also not normal. So when someone responds in a way during a crisis, we cannot judge who they are, kind of what they've been through by the responses, because again, in itself, we're listening and hearing things, and sometimes if you're part of the crisis yourself, you're acting in ways that are not your normal response. And as staff, as resident coordinators, advocates, case managers, clinicians, we're asking you to remain calm during a crisis and really process what's happening. So we're going to take this training on from the point of view of the provider, and for you to see what it's like for someone else when they're going through the crisis, and how is it that we can support ourselves and our teams during a crisis to have the best end response as much as possible. So next, we're going to take a look at this quick video on how chronic stress affects the brain.
Sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated. Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and of the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all, though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are smart. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control.
Okay, that was a short video on chronic stress and how it affects our brain. Wanted to start off with that so that I can point out to you guys. Okay, that was a short clip on the chronic stresses and how they affect our brain during a long period of time. I wanted to show you all that clip so that we can have a common understanding that stress through generations, stress that's chronic, deeply rooted in what we have to do, such as one going through homelessness or figuring out where their next meal will be or their next housing or employment opportunity, is something that affects individuals on a day-to-day basis but has long-term effects as well. So that's just a common knowledge that I wanted to make sure that all of us were on the same page. And here are some things about feeling unsafe about what could cause stress, the underlying causes of why someone's behavior would not be normal, why someone would escalate and react to what we're saying. And some of the reasons could be because they don't feel safe. And why is it that they don't feel safe? It could be because of a physical illness or a disability that they may have. It could be because of a mental illness. Again, they may feel challenged or not supported because of any type of a disability that would prohibit them from receiving services the same way or being perceived the same way. That could be one of the reasons why someone may feel unsafe. It could also be because of their history of trauma, their history of how they relate to stress, losses, what losses they've suffered along the way, maybe even today or years from now. We bring all that baggage with us when we come into shelter services or come into coming in from experiencing trauma into receiving services. It could be the environment. It could be when we walk in, if there's 10 people in the lobby, all strangers, everyone's sharing their personal story, this person's put on the spot, and that could make someone feel unsafe. I know that would make me feel really unsafe. And the lack of meaning in one's life. If someone doesn't have direction, has a hard time figuring out where they like to go next, sometimes that can also feel really unsafe as far as what the next steps are going to be for this individual and how they're going to accomplish and meet all of their needs. Some other indicators that one may be feeling unsafe would be someone who runs away, maybe stops responding. Kind of if you think of that flight, fight, or freeze response, this would be the flight response. They may cry a lot. It could also be seen as expressionless, where they don't change expression. They may have a sad appearance. They might hit themselves or others. They may act out. They may sleep poorly. They may report not being able to be comfortable. They may refuse to participate in an intake form or a program or a group that you're running. They self-stimulate. This could be stimulation through movement. This could be stimulation with the assistance of other substances, either legal or illegal. But they realize they have to kind of stimulate themselves in order to maintain and regulate their pace. They may hoard. They may flinch if you come near them or have fast movements. They may curse and they may complain. Right. So these are some indicators of when one might feel unsafe in their environment, kind of what's going on. So think about interactions you've had either in your roles here or at other positions in customer service, in providing good clinical support in a trauma-informed way. How have you seen some of these feelings come out? Have you seen someone feel unsafe where you didn't think of them in that same way before? That this could be a sign that they don't feel safe right now. I paused because I wanted to give an opportunity for you to have that discussion. Facilitator, if you need to keep me on pause, please do. Otherwise, we'll continue the conversation. So what can escalate our response or our behaviors, right? It's that feeling unsafe, all of those things that we went through, feeling like you're in a power struggle where either you're going to win or they're going to win, feeling as you're not in control of the little power that you have over yourself. The person you're working with can definitely feel unsafe because of that, and this will escalate their behaviors. The helper, meaning us, not attending to the person's body language. So if we're not reading the participant's body language correctly, if we're not responding at the right level of their stress, that can definitely escalate the response. Feeling threatened, physically or emotionally. If someone feels threatened, their behaviors will escalate very quickly. So we want to make sure to take a look at what is it that we're doing, our actions. How is it that we're responding to their escalation or the behaviors that we're seeing and matching them in order to bring them back down to a level where we can communicate and resolve things instead of the opposite, where we have to call 911 and unfortunately cannot provide them with services and are in a traumatic situation both for us and for them. The helper brings their own personal issues into the situation. And this can happen if you are not trained to practice with good, strong boundaries and good professionalism. If you're not providing good customer service, this can happen. Or if you're having a bad day and this person reminds you of someone, you need to really seek some support from your supervisor, step off, talk about what's happening with you, and not respond to this person so that we're providing good clinical customer service and care to someone, especially when they're escalating in their response. We can really do some damage to themselves here. Also, it would decrease the safety level for everyone around in the situation. If the participant doesn't feel heard, if they don't feel heard, or they feel like they don't have any choices, their behaviors will escalate. If the choices are forced, if it's sort of between a rock and a hard place, the behaviors will escalate. If it really isn't a true choice, if it's more like we're going to call the police if you don't leave, right? Is that truly a choice? Is there some other way we could have provided them with services? Some other way we could have had some level of need met, even if it's not the complete picture, but a small need that they have met in order for them to receive some level and leave with dignity and feel the sense of calming, some resources that they can attend to so that it could honor their choice and recognize that they were heard in the process, then that's the best outcome. But if they don't feel heard, if they feel as if they don't have any choices, that's going to get them to escalate in their behaviors. Here's some more causes of escalation, some sort of words I'm going to throw at you. Fear. If they're afraid of kind of what's going on, if they're afraid of the situation, if they've never been in the situation before or afraid of something in the environment. Peer pressure will definitely escalate someone if coercion is involved, if they feel like they're being forced to do something. Definitely their behaviors will escalate. If there's weapons present, that will escalate someone's behavior. If our pride is involved, that will escalate our behavior because now it reflects on our character, right? It's not even about our behaviors and what we're doing. It reflects on our character and who we are in our sense of our deeply rooted sense of self. That will definitely escalate someone's behavior very fast. Our tone of voice, right? The tone of voice that someone uses can really escalate someone's behavior. Our facial expressions. So if I'm not calm and put together, my facial expressions can really set someone off. If they're using any substances, drugs or alcohol, that definitely could be a reason if they're escalating because, again, it changes the way they might perceive something as being a threat or not, being safe or unsafe. And so if they don't have control in regulating what they're seeing, it's going to be more likely that they escalate. Self-esteem, of course, if their self-esteem is low or being challenged, then this is another reason where they may escalate. If there's bad communication, if the person's being asked the same question over and over again without feeling heard, right? It's all about feeling heard. Then they will respond in a way where their response is escalated. If they don't feel that there is, if they feel like they've been going around in circles and not really having their needs met, then definitely that's bad communication and will escalate their behaviors. Bad communication between the supervisor and the person that's working with them, between the person who took their intake and the person who's enrolling them into the program, right? So all of these things could be a reason for them to escalate. Our body language as staff can definitely be another reason why someone could escalate. We'll talk a little bit more about this and how much of our communication is that tone of voice and body language and how much of it is words. Not enough personal space. We'll talk a little bit more about this with Teresa in crisis prevention intervention training. But if you put your arms out straight in front of you and on the sides, that's your bubble. That's your personal space bubble. It's about 3 feet around behind you as well. And if someone's crowding in your space, really coming in there, and you don't have enough personal space, that could definitely lead to more reasons why one would escalate. If they're angry or if the person's responding to them in anger, that can lead to someone to escalate. I want you guys to think of some other reasons why someone would escalate. So I'm going to again ask the facilitator to put me on pause and for you guys to think of a few more reasons why someone would escalate. Okay. So next, here's the escalating person's point of view. If they're upset and angry and you are the person that's perceived as, the person holding authority or the person telling them, directing their behavior, and you're holding that stop sign and you're saying, nope, we can't do that here. It's not allowed, or you're putting down a boundary, right? So what happens is here they have some type of a response as far as what's going on. They're reacting to something. And what we're doing is we're putting the boundary down saying, do not escalate, right? What happens is we have unmet needs. We have individuals who may be able to refrain from acting out. Some maybe, some not. But in both circumstances, their needs did not go met. If all we're doing is just reprimanding or just holding up a boundary without really exploring and reflecting into how else we can assist this person. So what does an escalating person look like? Here's some early warning signs that you should pay attention to when working with someone. If there's a change in mood or level of anxiety, if they were calm when they first came in, but all of a sudden things are getting a little more agitated, they want to move a little faster, they want you to move a little faster, maybe, they're pacing, their movements, either they're walking towards you or away from you, pacing in front of you. These are all early warning signs that something is shifting, that this person is now entering a situation that they normally wouldn't enter in and are responding in a less threatening, but still they're feeling unsafe. They're starting to get there, right? What they are saying and how they are saying it doesn't fit, right? If what they're saying is, I need your help, but they're saying it in a way that's defensive or loud or aggressive or demanding, or these are all, some of them are judgment words, so you'll have to kind of excuse me there, but how they're saying things and what they're asking and what they're saying there's a gap between their emotionality level, what their need, and how they're able to express that need. If there's changes in their baseline behaviors, if you know this individual and know how they normally are, normally communicate, shake hand, the cadence of their voice, and there's changes in that, this person's not how they normally respond, then there might be some reason for you to think about, okay, something might be happening here. Let's take a look. And this might be an early warning sign for them. And again, remember, these are early warning signs for each individual. They're going to be very different. So you're going to have to learn to build a rapport with an individual and learn to get to know them. And if you don't, these are some common signs to watch out for. So if some of these things are happening in front of you, it may be that this is an early warning sign, something for you to pay attention to. If their eyes are watchful, scanning the environment around them or assessing what you're doing or what's going on, again, early warning signs that someone's escalated. Their behavior, their feelings of being unsafe, they're starting to get there. That doesn't mean they're going to act out right away. It just means they're going to need more than a normal response, right? They're going to need a more concentrated response. If there's concentration problems, if they can't remember what they told you, where they left things, again, could be an early warning sign. If they have disorganized behaviors, if they put their bag down and they're looking through it and they can't find something, or any type of behavior that would indicate that this person isn't really in their full functioning self, then there might be a reason for an early warning sign. If their gestures are jerky or uncontrolled, I would think of large body movements. I normally talk with my hands, but if my hands are out in front of my face and I'm saying, hey, stop, right? That's not normal. That's not normal for me. That's not how I normally talk. That's not how I normally express myself. So watch out for those big gestures. And if we don't respond right away to those early warning signs, then there could be a risk of imminent danger, right? There could be a risk of this person going into a phase where they're about to harm someone else or themselves, right? Either verbally or physically. In their face, you start to see them going pale or flushed. Their lips are going to start tightening over their teeth. Their eyebrows are going to drop to protect or cover their eyes. And they normally break, stare, and then look at their intended target. So they don't really look back at you, like almost as in a challenging way. The chin may drop to protect the neck. That's also another imminent danger of things are about to happen that we need to be very careful in regulating and controlling. Otherwise, hands could be placed. And in general, their breathing will become rapid and deep. So we know that they're going into fight mode or flight mode. Their breathing pattern is going to change. Their fists are clenched, either again to fight or to flee or to freeze, right? This is one way that they protect themselves. And their stance goes from a square stance to a bladed stance, and in a sense that they're protecting their normal bodily organs. Their body movement may stop, or they might be rocking from heel to toe. So normally you'll have to kind of know what their baseline was, what they were like when they walked in, as compared to what they're like in front of you now, for you to recognize, is this someone who was previously moving and now they've stopped moving and are just staring and intensely holding their gaze? Or is someone who came in pretty relaxed and now they're rocking from heel to toe? So you need to know kind of what behaviors they walked in with. So assessment starts at the very beginning when someone walks in and you say hi to greet them. Lowering of the entire body to lunge. I haven't seen this one ever, actually, but that has happened with individuals who want to attack someone in a manner where it requires them to be lower than they are so that they can lunge. That's also something to watch out for. If you have a desk between the two of you, leave the desk there. Don't come around unless you know that this person, you know the person and you know how to use de-escalation skills in order to work with them. So beginning de-escalation, the de-escalation, the word in itself means to reduce the level of conflict and return the behaviors, return the emotionality back to baseline, back to a place where we can work things out so that we can both be open-minded and have good, clear communication on what is it we'd like to do. And this is accomplished through building quick rapport and a sense of connectedness with this person to to reduce the likelihood of physical violence. Excuse me there. To reduce the likelihood of physical violence. So that's right. We have to build rapport with almost everyone we meet in a short amount of time, even if it's to comment on the shirt that they're wearing, or how their eyes get so bright when they smile, or the fact in a welcoming way, welcome to our HomeFirst services. How is it that I can support you? And meeting with them genuinely one-on-one and building that sense of connectedness. That is how we begin that process of de-escalation, is for them to feel a genuine connectedness with us. That sense of being connected through our specific verbal, psychological, and nonverbal techniques shows that we have control over our own emotional response while we're guiding them using communication. Right? We're guiding our own communication. And what we're showing is that I have response in the way I'm responding to you, which allows for that person to take a little bit of our calm and apply that to themselves and feel safer, because you're showing them it's okay to feel calm. It's okay to feel safe. And that rubs off on people much more than if you let their upset, their building early warning sign or their imminent danger sign slip off on you, and now you are in a reactive state rather than an active state. So again, so the first point, we want to start with de-escalation, right? And so there's a few steps of how is it that we de-escalate. With step one is through our awareness and our assessment. And then we take action, right? There's nonverbal and verbal behaviors that we need to do in order to take action. But it starts with being aware and assessing the situation. So you want to take a look at the information about the circumstances, about the stages of escalation. Where are they? Are they just getting to that point? Is this still an early warning sign? Is this person triggered? Are they about to place hands on someone? You want to take a look at what happened, who's involved, who's in the control of the situation, right? Who's the primary person leading the situation, and what have they tried? If you are not the primary in a situation where something something's about to happen or happening, then you need to, your presence can also help de-escalate if done so correctly. Again, remember, our body language and our tone of voice plays a lot into what we do and how someone de-escalates. So you want to check in with the person who's the point on the situation, but in a non-judgmental way, so that it cannot be taken in as you're the backup to an altercation, right? But more like you're the backup support in a situation to help de-stress and regulate everything. In the action steps, we talked a little bit about verbal and nonverbal behaviors, right? Strategies that we use in order to guide our communication to resolve conflicts without the need to use force. So we'll take a look at what those verbal and nonverbal behaviors look like, and how is it that we begin that. So with the first step, with action and awareness, you want to think of these steps help you identify the preceding factors, right? What led them to feel unsafe? What led them to raise their voice, or to pace, or to shut down, or to make blank staring eye contact with you? Or, right, what is the preceding factors? What happened so that this person in front of you is not responding in a typical, normal way? I'll give you an example. If someone comes in from the heat, it's 104 degrees outside. They're panting, they're not dressed appropriately, they're carrying 2 bags of clothes, and they're asking to meet with someone who's not here. They're going to hear a no from us, right? And it depends on how we deliver that no, that this person's not available to meet with you. But how I can assist their needs? This person can either really feel escalated, unsafe, and act out, or this person could hear what we're saying and we can work with them to resolve what's going on and find a way that they can have some of their needs met, if not all. Right? Awareness and assessment also helps us control our emotional response, because again, this is a triggering event. This is a triggering event for the individual, and lo and behold, yes, it is a triggering event for you. So it helps identify what that is for you, where you are in reading the situation, and how is it that you can support yourself also, right? Again, awareness and assessment also will help us identify what interventions to use. How is it that we're going to work with this person? So that example that I gave you of the person who came in 104-degree weather, not dressed well, too many things they're carrying too many things, and we're about to tell them no, that they cannot meet with the person that they're wanting to meet with. Maybe they're not available, and maybe they're in a meeting, right? How we do that can really escalate their behaviors or de-escalate them. And how we design that intervention of how to support them is very helpful to resolve the conflict and before it even happens. And helping with timing the intervention, right? You have to time the intervention to the right level of escalation. So if you're telling someone who came in off the heat and you say, no, they're not here right now, but calm down, it's okay, right? You kind of jump the gun. You don't know how they're going to respond. That's very fast. That's very quick. You want to time the intervention equally. Again, misfiring or mistiming could result in bodily harm or injury, or it could help in the person not feeling unsafe because they think you're not feeling unsafe with them around. It could work in both ways. So the timing really has to be on point. So first, with assessment awareness, we will ask you to know yourself. How do we react in a crisis situation? We'll determine the situation and determine if it escalates or resolves or becomes tolerable, where we both maybe agree to disagree, but we can get along knowing that we're both going to be safe around each other, right? We may not have broken through all the barriers of trust, but we might have started somewhere, right? So that's very important for us to know. How is it that we respond and react in crisis situations? So take a moment and think about that. Take a moment and think about what are your hot buttons? How do you react? Okay. So, talking about your hot buttons, right? So here are a few common hot buttons that sometimes we, as individuals who have authority in a situation, can come across. Sometimes it's that need to be right, that I'm the case manager, I know what's going on, I'm the front desk staff, I'm the resident coordinator, I'm the person answering this phone line, the hotline, that you have a need to be right, right? And that's false. Sometimes you don't know and you're not right. And we have to own up to that and take responsibility. But that could be someone's hot button, that need to be right. I know if that's one for you. The need to please others or be accepted. And if someone's displeased in front of us or feeling that they're not okay, then that could be a hot button for us too. And it could bring our own personal self into the environment, which is unethical. The need to be in control this usually leads to a power struggle, right? If we need to be in control, we need to tell someone how to do something and where to do something and why to do something, then we're asking a lot of an individual who's going through a traumatic situation in the first place. And again, we want power, even a small amount of power. So if I'm the participant, if I'm the one wanting services, having a little bit of power and control will help me feel safe. But if I have a total loss of power, if someone else is in charge, I'm going to feel unsafe and I'm more likely to act out. So that person's hot button of always wanting to be in control could really, really make me feel upset and would trigger me to become an escalated very fast as a participant. Need to solve the problem. And sometimes we can solve the problem and sometimes we can't. So this is something that, some of us may have unconsciously thought about or consciously thought about. But what does a solution look like and whose solution is it? Those are some things to think about. If we're burnt out, if we're not practicing good self-care and we are burnt out and feeling some of the stressors of that compassion fatigue or the stress-related trauma ourselves, then that's definitely a hot button that definitely can work against you in de-escalating someone. If there's entitlement issues, that you're a supervisor or a program coordinator or a director and this is the way things are and this is how you've designed them and we need to keep them that way. Or some type of an entitlement on our end that this is how my image of how staff should be treated, and that could really get in our way. That could be a hot button and could really escalate the situation. Personalizing, that means taking things way too literally to yourself. Remember, there has to be that line between a personal life and a professional life. And so if some things are being said, I want you to think about, Are they really about you? Is this really about you or the person who's saying them? Right? 99.9% of the time, it's not about you. It's about the person across from you and what's happening with them. So try to stay with them and not with yourself. The tendency to compete, and again, this leads to power struggles, right? Compete with how soon you can get something done, or how soon you can something be addressed, or how many people you can check in, and sort of ignoring the situation that could really escalate someone's response. The tendency to blame, well, you should have thought of that before you got in here. Right? That's not helpful. Maybe they really should have thought of some things, but we don't know why they didn't. Again, they're leading a traumaful life. Being homeless is quite traumatic. So we can't judge. And in that same sense, we cannot blame. It's unethical. And that tendency to blame, even if it's sort of done in a backhanded, passive way, will really come back and escalate someone's behaviors much more likely. And response to threats, the right violation, or I'm going to tell the boss, I'm going to write you up, right? Like that's my response to you, is I'm going to follow it up with a threat, right? Or this is how you respond to a threat, is with another threat. That can really escalate a situation very fast, down to fisticuffs. Your reputation, if you feel like your reputation of how you're perceived as so-and-so staff member on the team, that again, if we start to personalize it, or ameliorate or think about how the responses of this person are affecting us and our reputation, that can definitely be a hot button and could escalate someone very, very fast. Or the quote unquote, just like thinking. This person is just like so-and-so else, right? No two people are that alike. We all experience trauma, stress, life, happiness, love differently. And our experiences are very unique, and we expect ourselves to be treated very uniquely. When you have a problem or a question, you expect to feel heard. So we want to push that same respect, that honor, that dignity onto the folks we work with, and want to respect their uniqueness and make sure that we have them feel heard as well. So here's some barriers that could get in the way to us having some positive reactions. So this is still about us, right? This is still about our hot buttons. If there's cultural differences between who we are and the person we're serving, we've got to be much more diligent in taking a look and understanding what is it that they're going through. If we're seeing them through our own cultural lens, we're not doing enough, right? We're not doing enough. We're not promoting good cultural diversity values. We're not promoting good ethical values and really meeting their needs and really assessing what their needs are. If there's poor listening skills, if we're kind of listening to this person, but the radio's going and you're checking someone in on HMIS and someone's on the phone, this usually means that there's 6 people in your ear and you're not hearing any one of them, right? So poor listening skills can really get in the way to having positive reactions by someone who we're working with. Making assumptions. If someone comes in assuming that we know what they need. I wonder how many times that's happened. I wonder how many times I've done that. That's something to think about. We cannot make assumptions about the individual that walks in. We've really got to ask them, how is it that I can support you today? Being preoccupied or in a hurry. We understand that our jobs are tough and there are many working parts to what we do each and every day. But we've got to take a look and be present for the person that we're speaking to so that they can feel heard and that their voice is heard and their needs are heard and addressed in an appropriate manner. So that can really help to positively de-escalate someone, is to really pay attention, right? Good listening skills and not be preoccupied with what we're doing. If you walk in with 6 papers in your hand saying, how can I help you? And immediately look down at your paper, you're preoccupied. You're not listening. It's not about this person anymore. It's about you, right? If we react with anger, if we react with a personalization, or we've taken it so completely seriously that, again, it's now about us and not about the person that we're serving, which is unethical and not okay. Again, if that's what's happening with you, check in with your supervisor, work with them on some conflict resolution skills and how you can work to de-escalate what's going on with you and really practice some good self-care. Defensiveness, feeling as if you're being called out, and now you're the one being put in a corner. So if you're defensive, that's really going to get in the way of having a positive reaction from someone. So again, reminding yourself, this is not about you. This is about the person you're working with. And sometimes we're human. Well, actually, we're human all the time, right? We're human, but sometimes we make mistakes, and it's okay to own up to them. Instead of being defensive of, no, I'm a staff person, I would never make that mistake. Being able to say, you know what, I can see where I might have said that, and I'm really sorry. I apologize if that caused any inconvenience to you. Okay? Blaming the other person for their situation. If you had gotten here faster or this or that, right? That is definitely a barrier to getting a positive reaction by someone. Our hot buttons, that giant list that we just sort of reviewed, any one of these could definitely be a barrier to eliciting a positive reaction. And our language differences. If the person doesn't understand the way you use a particular word or common slang, or the way they've used a word or a slang, it could really make us feel unsafe or them feel unsafe. So understanding what those languages differences are as well can sometimes be very helpful. So know how you react, right? These are some physiological reactions that can happen. When we see a crisis, yes, we are involved just as much. And these are some physiological things that can happen to us and do happen to us. Our heart rate increases, right? Our adrenaline jumps. Our body temperature usually rises. We're going into fight, flight, freeze. So we need our cortisol levels are pumping, our adrenaline is going, and our face is being flushed, right? So our face is kind of drawing color away from it, moving towards the heart, moving towards our limbs. We may start to shake. Maybe you have an increase in your volume or the tone of your speech. Maybe you enunciate things to a point where this person feels disrespected, right? There might be nervous laughter. Someone might laugh nervously in how they respond. They might have sweaty palms. You might have sweaty palms or clenched fists. It's really important to know what your physiological responses are, because sure, just as you are being aware of what's going on in the situation and assessing the individual, they are assessing you too. They are reading you as well. And all of these things can help them understand that, something is going on and I need to be more on guard. I need to be more, I don't feel safe right now, right? So know what your physiological responses are. For me, I would say the increased heart rate is usually the thing that hits me last. So my heart rate doesn't increase. My heart rate stays the same, but I notice that. And it triggers me to think, okay, something is going on here. I feel like my heart wants to beat faster. So instead of giving in and feeling like, okay, go for it, I take a few deep breaths and I try to practice my listening skills and really think about how is it that I can support this person and not make it about me. So everyone has a different technique in finding out how to manage your physiological responses. So I ask you to explore some of your own. And of course, the point of all of that is to keep in balance and to keep in control. When we're working to de-escalate someone else, our first responsibility is to ourselves. That we want to de-escalate ourselves first, right? Remember to breathe. As I told you, when something happens in front of me, I start to breathe deeper. Instead of thinking about, oh my goodness, what's happening, and getting kind of caught up in that feeling, I start to take deep breaths and act calm, right? And sometimes it's faking it, and that's all right. Fake it until you make it. Your body is very good at listening to your body signals. So if you're telling your body, I'm going to take deeper breaths, and I want to keep my breathing very regular. I want to take deep breaths down into my belly, and I want to make sure that I'm relaxed. I'm going to relax my shoulders purposefully. And I'm going to meet this person where they're at so that I can provide them with amazing service and really work with them to de-escalate what's going on right now. Your body's going to recognize what you're doing, and it's going to take suit. It's going to follow. It's going to follow what you're doing, and it's going to take that relaxation stance elsewhere in your body, in your hands, clenched hands, feet, your stomach. It's going to start to lower some of that cortisol, and that faking it becomes about making it. Okay? Having neutral body language, meaning you're not shaking, you're not wobbling, you're not punching one hand, balling into a fist and punching the other hand with it. These are all reactionary responses. You want your body language to be neutral, which usually means hands at both sides, and hands should be open, right? Hands should be on the sides of your legs and both hands should be open to show that you are, again, no balled fist, your hands are not in danger and you're not carrying anything that you can assault someone with. Having a relaxed body and showing slow or small gestures. Usually that also means slow or small words too, right? But first we're talking about ourselves. So slow or small gestures. So if we're making slow and small gestures, that's helping us keep in control and in balance and rubbing off on the other person. So they're in control as well. Reassure yourself. Tell yourself you can do this. Positive self-talk goes a long way. Tell yourself you've done this before. You have great customer service skills. You remember what to do. Even if you don't, you can get through this. That will help you get through it. Project success. Think at the end of this interaction, I'm going to understand this person better. I'm going to help them meet their needs and we're going to go about our separate ways. And maybe I'll find them later on and check in with them later. Right? Project that success on forward. Act and ask for help also. So find a way to get help if you need it. And you can always say, I'm quite new or I feel like I don't have an answer that's going to be the best answer for you right now. Let me get some help. That's always very supportive. Position yourself for safety, right? So we're talking a lot more about this with Teresa in crisis prevention and intervention, but you want to position yourself for safety. You want to avoid the danger zone, which is within that arm length of someone. You want to keep that 3 feet away, right? Or 1 arm length away out of reach. And the zone of influence, which is where you can really affect someone, it has to be outside of that danger zone, but it has to be close enough where you can communicate effectively. If you're standing on one end of the parking lot and they're on the other end saying, calm down, that's not going to work. You're not in a zone of influence, right? You might be safe if they lunge at you, but you're also not going to be effective in any other way, right? So if there's a desk behind you, in front of you, use those natural barriers, right? Have them, especially if they're seating, ask them to sit down, right? So about that zone of influence and zone of safety, you want to be outside of the 1 arm reach, but you want to be close enough where they can hear you correctly. They can hear the change in the tone of your voice. It's still private, right? It's still a private space. An awareness assessment of not just yourself, again, of the individual. So you want to take a look at their safety. Do they feel unsafe? And that's something that you can ask them as well. Have they had any substance use or abuse or withdrawal, right? Do they have a history of violence? Are they currently going through paranoia? Have they taken their medication lately? Do they feel physical pain or are they ill? Difficulties with communication. Are they having a hard time telling you what is it that they need or want? If they have a history of abuse, feeling discriminated against, money issues, financial issues are definitely a reason why someone would escalate. Having no cigarettes, right, could be a reason why someone can escalate. Having low self-esteem, social stressors, plans of service, right? Our action plan could be a reason why we're really stressed out about meeting with our case manager. We don't know what to do, and that could increase my stress and increase it to a point where I don't know what to do with it. Now it becomes unnormal and unnatural, and I'm responding in an unnormal and an unnatural way. And our cultural backgrounds as well. So these are just some of the things to be aware of the individual. Again, it's very helpful to build that rapport, to build that sense of connectedness with the person you're working with, because you're going to be able to answer and take a look at a lot of these questions, right? If someone's ill or in pain, or if they have a difficulty in communicating what their needs are, you've got to make a way for them to feel safe enough to share that with you, right? And if you don't know, where can you get this information? How do you get help so that you can get this information? Who can you call? Again, you're also not just assessing yourself and the individual, you're assessing the environment. You want to make sure that there's no audience around, right? If it's crowded and there's no personal space, that's going to escalate the person really quickly. So you want to take a look at clear the lobby or ask people, would you mind giving us some room, or asking the person to step into an empty room so that you can have a discussion. If it's too noisy, right, that could really trigger someone. Again, weather changes. If it's too warm or too cold outside, this could be a reason for someone to escalate. And this is going to, in your assessment, this might be something you think about and become aware about in why someone's acting a certain way, right? Because it's all about, even with this set of skills, it's all about not we don't want to ask them what's wrong with you, right? That's not the question that we have in the back of our mind. The question we have in the back of our mind is what happened to you, right? What have you gone through that now this is how you're choosing to behave? Right? That should always be the question that we ask. We'll talk more about it in trauma-informed care. The same thing with the environment as well, right? What happened to you? What's happening outside and how is it affecting you? Any changes from the norm, behavior of others. If someone else is agitated in the lobby, that's going to make other people in the lobby agitated as well. Holidays, right? We don't think about that. But Christmas and Thanksgiving and their birthdays and Mother's Day and their favorite person's birthday. These could all be 4th of July, right? These could all be some type of an environmental micro or macro trigger for them. And that's something that we'll have to kind of watch out for. So for around holiday times, being extra keen and sensitive and leveling your awareness to make sure that you have your eye on how someone is reacting and what's going on for them. If there's potential weapons in the environment, that also can be very detrimental. So you want to make sure to remove those. Avenues of escape, right? Meaning if their escape is blocked, if they're not able to leave, that's going to make them feel unsafe, right? And also escape for you. If something de-escalates, if something, how do you clear the lobby with your voice and how do you get yourself to safety? And the use of natural barriers, right? What could be a natural barrier around the person you're working with and yourself? At the BRC, I used to have an office that I used to share with 2 other people. And we had one entrance and exit, but we had a window. My desk was at the very back of the room where I did not have a clear avenue of escape. I had to walk around this person, at which point, if they were upset, they could place hands on me. So I had to always think, okay, I have to keep my window open. And what are the chances I can kick open this small screen and get to a place of safety, right? Using those natural barriers and points of escape around you to maintain that safety is very helpful. So that was some of our awareness and assessment skills. Now we're going to get into our action skills. There's, remember, 2 kinds of action skills, nonverbal and verbal. The first one, we're going to go through our nonverbal skills, right? What is being said, right? We talked a little bit earlier about tone of voice and body language. That's something I want you to think about here, right? In this photograph really quickly, that our body language accounts for 55% of what others hear, right? And the tone, our tone of voice accounts for 38% of what others hear. What that means is our words only go as far as 7%, meaning 93% of the communication that we do has to do without the words that we use. It has to do with the body language, how we present ourselves, and the tone of voice. How is it that we're delivering that no or that message? When someone's coming in off the heat in 104-degree weather, how is it that we're telling them that their case manager is not available right now? If we say, oh, they're not available right now, come back later. Oh, wow, that sounds very dismissive, right? I'm not in front of you, but you can see that sounded very dismissive, short, clip, didn't feel very nice. And you can imagine my body language probably reflects some of that right now, right? So you want to take a look at your body language and your tone of voice and how we deliver that 7% of words. That's going to make a big difference. You want to appear calm, centered, and self-assured, right? If you are calm, you're going to ooze calm to the other person. Make limited eye contact, right? Meaning you want to make neutral eye contact that sort of continues on to show you're there and listening, but not holding their gaze and making things uncomfortable. And you want to maintain a neutral facial expression. Excuse me, that got cut off there. You want to make sure that your face isn't reflecting anger or judgment or bias in any way. You want to make sure to keep it centered and neutral. Keep a relaxed and alert posture. That's hard to do, relaxed and alert, right? Relaxed meaning you're not agitated, your hands are by your side, your hands are open, but they're alert. My eyes are looking around. I'm taking a look at this individual. I'm looking to meet their needs. I have my documentation with me. I know where my phone is. I know where my walkie is. I know how to get support, right? Avoid aggressive stances. What is an aggressive stance? An aggressive stance is usually someone who has their hands crossed in front of their chest, bouncing from foot to foot, right? That could be seen as very dismissive and aggressive. But again, open hands, slow, small phrases, and delivering them with small body movements will really help avoid that aggressive stance. Minimizing your body movements, so taking a look at where your body is and how you're moving it. If you're someone who has high stress or high anxiety yourself, or you move a lot, maybe you have you move your legs a lot, that's something for you to think about when someone's escalating, that your body language and your body movements have a lot to do with how the other person is responding. So please be aware of what is it that you do when you get stressed, and how is it that you can manage some of those things to not escalate the situation. Be at the same eye level, meaning if they're standing, you should also stand so that you can both be at somewhat of an eye level. If you're sitting, ask them to have a seat so you can both be at the same eye level again. Do not point or shake your finger. That could be a sign of disrespect, right? These are all nonverbal cues. So don't point your finger at them, even if it's your pinky finger or your thumb finger, and don't shake your finger, definitely not. And lo and behold, do not touch, right? We do not touch unless, again, in some circumstances where you have permission to maybe, help them with their belongings, but things like that, again, permission. And as far as personhood, touching their body, if someone is escalating, that touch is not going to be seen as a positive response. 99% of the time it's going to be seen as a negative response, so we want to avoid that. Again, moving on to verbal skills, right? So now in our action steps, before we use any of our words, we want to let them vent. We want to talk to them and ask them, what's going on for you? So tell me, you sound upset, right? I'm going to use all of my de-escalation skills. I'm going to be aware of the situation. I'm going to think through what they told me when they came in and where they are now. I'm going to look at the situation around the room. I'm going to take a look at the person. I'm taking a look at and regulating myself, and I'm asking them, wow, you've gone through a lot today. So tell me, how are things? Giving them a chance to vent can really be a blessing, because it allows for them to use their own words and speak their truth. And again, pay attention when they're talking. One of the things we want to make sure to do is when they're venting, we want to be listening. Now, there's three main parts to good listening skills. Attending, that you're giving your physical and your mental attendance, right? Attention to someone. That you're following, you're making sure to be engaged using good eye contact, unobtrusive gestures like nodding of the head or saying okay or asking a question, let's say here or there, right? You're following what they're saying and you're reflecting it. You're paraphrasing it. You're using your own words or your own feelings to describe what the other person is saying. That's creating empathy. Right? So you're reflecting back. So what I'm hearing you say is you went to 3 other shelters and they did not have space for you. And someone gave you our phone number and said, take this bus to HomeFirst. And now you're here in 104-degree heat with inappropriate clothing on and 2 bags of clothing with you. Right? So you want to paraphrase and reflect on what's going on. Right? So these are the 3 main attending skills to listening. Right? This is where we're using our voice finally. Look at all the work we had to do with our assessment and our awareness, our work on ourselves, understanding what's going on with the individual and the environment. And then again, with our nonverbal skills, taking a look at our tone of voice and our body movements and allowing for them to vent before we even say anything at all. What we say is about what they're going through. It's about them, right? I want you guys to really pay attention to that. We're not setting down the rules just yet. We're not clarifying and getting there just yet. We're making them feel heard, right? Again, this is a list of how to de-escalate someone when their behaviors have escalated to a point that it could be a physical or an emotional altercation. And your empathic listening skills, how do you listen empathically? You don't judge. You don't ignore or pretend to pay attention. You listen to what they're really saying. You restate what they're saying. You clarify that message. You repeat it back to them and you validate their feelings. This is how you'll start to establish rapport with them. And building rapport with someone starts with listening. So when you're using empathic skills, you're really trying to connect into a place of hurt or where you felt something like that before and what they're describing to you. So you can really feel as if you were in their shoes. What you're doing. And to de-escalate effectively, you have to keep a clear line of communication open. right? Meaning you have to be able to listen to them and remove some of these common barriers that get into the way of communication, like prejudging. Don't judge what they've gone through or what they're going through currently. Don't already process and have a label or a diagnosis or a statement in mind. That's not listening, right? So not listening is also a communication barrier. Criticizing, telling them what they should have done or should not have done is definitely also out of the picture. That is going to be a barrier in how we de-escalate effectively. Name calling, it's also a communication barrier, unethical. Engaging in power struggles. Well, I'll give you an example here. If someone comes in and says, "Can I sit in your lobby?" After management said no one can sit in the lobby, everybody has to wait outside in the courtyard. It's 104 degrees. This person came out of 3 other shelters, as you know, right? They have inappropriate clothing on. They have too much clothing on. It's too hot. They have more clothing in 2 different bags that they're carrying on their arms. Heck yeah, I would say, you know what? Let me pull up a chair for you and let you have a seat for just a minute. If that's going to help you de-escalate, if that's going to help the situation and not get to a point where I'm criticizing or not listening, then that's great, right? And then we can say, actually, we're not really supposed to, but you look like you could use it, right? Offering them a cold glass of water, right? Those are all great things. Name calling, don't do it. Engaging in power struggles. Oh no, there's an open lobby full of chairs, but I can't have you sit down, right? Again, if we had everybody sit down at every time, we're not really following the rules. So you have to kind of find that gray line of, in de-escalation, what are some of those things that you're able to give in order to de-escalate a situation, work with them to remove communication barriers, and have a sense of mutual respect and dignity. Ordering someone around, telling them what to do, is also a communication barrier. Threatening, right? A threatening response is always a communication behavior. Minimizing their experiences and what they've gone through is definitely a communication barrier. In fact, all of these things, ordering, threatening, minimizing, engaging in power struggles, will probably escalate their behaviors faster than you can blink. And same goes for arguing with someone. And, this is what I heard you say first. This is what I saw. This is what I know. Honor and respect their experience, even if you know that there may not be 100% the truth. Honor what they're saying right now and think about what are their current needs. How can I help them meet their current needs? Might not be about, again, same thing with them. It might not be about the words that they're using, but what we have to do is try to figure out what is their unmet need. So here's some common phrases that one would hear if they are some miscommunication phrases. If you're ordering, it might be, you must do this, or you have to do this, right? Relationship dependent, like our management directives. Our management says you have to do this, right? I mean, I always say, throw your boss under the bus, right? Throw your boss under the bus and say, actually, my boss told me, these are the rules at this time, so that I don't look like the bad person. That's perfectly fine to do. But that can also be done due to management. We can't have anybody do this, right? That's really condescending and borders on lecturing and not listening, again, to the person's needs. So you want to do it in a way that's supportive, in a tone of voice that's supportive. Threatening. If you don't do that, then this is what will happen, right? You've got to get that message across, a consequence. You got to be able to show to them, if this is a behavior that continues, then these are the consequences that are going to happen, right? That's different than threatening. Preaching, you should do this or you should not do that, right? Lecturing, that's why you were wrong, right? These are some common phrases that highlight some of these misconceptions and miscommunication barriers. Judging, you're lazy, you'll never change, I've seen you hear it over and over again. All of these things should not be part of our vocabulary here at work as a professional. Excusing, oh, it's not so bad, right? That minimizing comes back. Or labeling, you're being unrealistic. How can you get such and such apartment in a couple of weeks, right? You don't want to do that. Again, this person is the owner of their own experiences and how they feel about them, which means they're absolutely 100% right. What that means is they also have to follow rules, right? They also have to follow protocol. You also have to maintain a sense of safety and balance in everything. So you've got to work with them without using a misconception phase in order so that we keep those doors of communication open and we can work on a solution that fits for both them and for us. So to de-escalate positively, you want to use positive statements like, I really want to help you. So tell me how I can best support you, right? So please tell me more so I can understand how to help you. Let's call Mr. Smith. I know he'll be able to help with this. Let's call your case manager. I know that they're going to be able to help with that. Ms. Jones handles this for our district. I'll ask her what she thinks about the situation. She's always willing to help, right? Asking, this person's always willing to help. Let's figure out what we can do. Maybe it's calling one or two resources together, one or two shelters together, one or two agencies together, so they get a handle of things. You have a few words out there, and some thoughts given to how you can support them. It's about that resource development too, right? So these are all, you can use resource development in de-escalating positively. Putting yourself in their shoes for finding a solution to the problem. If you were stuck in that situation, how would you like to be treated? I want to ask you. If you were there and they were in your shoes, how would you want them to treat you? What would you need? Think about that. Decrease demands and increase praise, and the praise must be genuine. Wow, you are doing exceptionally well with all the news that you've heard today. With everything you've told me about the situation, you are holding things absolutely together, and I admire you for that, right? That will show, wow, I'm doing things well, right? And that usually means they're going to continue to sustain that rather than making demands on their sustainability and wearing things thin. And of course, communicating clearly. Explain your intentions and why is it that you're asking them to do it, right? Convey your expectations clearly. You may need to repeat this a few times, and that's okay. What's really helpful is if you use their name. Right? Making requests that are very simple and specific lead a long way. If you have a very long and complicated response, or you're telling them that you called and the manager told you to do this, and then the lead told you to also do that, and you've got 9 people talking in your ear and you're trying to explain all of their responses to them, that's not simple and that's not very specific. So you really want to help them hone down on what's the best response. And sometimes that's just giving them exactly what they need to hear rather than the whole line of, I called 6 different supervisors, got 7 different reactions, and this is the line of action. Let's just go with a line of action, right? So we're thinking, I called a few people, and this is kind of the response I'm getting, right? Let's keep it safe and simple. Be an active and reflective listener, right? You remember being what a reflective listener is all about? You're reflecting back, you're hearing, you're paying attention, right? And you're nodding along, you're giving that attention, and you're reflecting back, you're using your words to describe their feelings and reflecting back what you heard so that they do feel heard, right? That's very important in effectively communicating clearly. And it's always better to request and suggest than command and demand. So if I say to someone, I hear what you're saying, but when you talk really loud, I can't hear you. So may I please ask for you to speak at a lower level of voice, right? That usually works because especially if I'm speaking at a lower level of voice, they're really going to have to get really calm and try to hear over their thumping heart to hear me say, when you speak that loudly, I can't hear you. May I please ask you to speak a little more softly so that I can better communicate, right? That's really going to get their heart rate down. They're going to have to really not shout at me and have that ringing in their ear so that they can hear me and then speak to me on that level. Align yourself with the person. Find a point where you both agree, right? It's very important to get that yes, even if it's how bad of a treatment they had at their last shelter. Yes, that's terrible, man. Or how hot it is outside, or how much their feet hurt, or how it was terrible. The journey that they've had so far is just absolutely terrible. And that you can both agree to that, right? Be seen as an ally, someone that they can trust. Distance yourself from authority, because usually authority is not seen as a good thing. So, like I said, throw your boss under the bus, right? Throw me under the bus. Distance yourself from the from the authority in a way that allows you to individuate and be that ally. Acknowledge a grain of truth, right? So it might be something like, so unfortunately, we don't have any shelter beds available, and I know it's 104 degrees and you're dressed way too warmly and you have 2 bags of clothing and you got to get somewhere else. But I got to tell you, we don't have any room open here tonight, but, and now redirect that attention, shift the focus or that energy onto assisting. How do you get out of the situation, right? So you get out of that run of, you're no longer jumping in talking about the problem, but now you're wanting to be productive about the topic, right? So you've given them that grain of truth, and now you're going to focus that attention on, but what we can do is, there are 3 other shelters in town that have very similar requirements to us, and I have a bus token here that I can give you so you can catch the bus. And there's buses that are still running so you can get there in time. Oh, and by the way, let me get you a cold glass of water, right? Redirecting. Now you're all about changing into the solutions and thinking about the attention and direction of that energy when the topic that you're talking about of, whatever problem or issue becomes no longer productive, right? We've got to make sure that on the one end, after we're hearing everything that's going on, we've got to take some action. We've got to make what they're saying productive. We've got to find out what that unmet need is and support them in meeting those needs. It's also giving feedback, identifying their behavior without demanding a change. Right? It could be, you seem really upset right now. Right? Listing consequences of inappropriate behavior without threats or anger. We've talked about that before. That, I can't hear you when you're talking this loudly, and usually when you're talking, what you're showing me right now with, and again, point out the behaviors, right? The list of consequences for inappropriate behaviors. You're pacing, you're hitting the desk over and over again, and unfortunately, if this continues to happen, then, right? So that I'm not angry, I'm not making a threat. I'm telling them that if that behavior continues to happen, here are the list of consequences that will then need to take place. Right? Know when to give feedback. If you can prevent someone who's escalating from further escalation, that's great. But if someone's already agitated, it's going to make things worse. So you have to time it correctly, right? And you've got to change the environment. You've got to remove the bystanders, or you've got to get to a safer place to talk where there's easy escape and access for both of you. Also, what really helps is asking them to sit down. This really lowers their arousal and decreases agitation. Your heart rate is lower. Your knees are closer to your chest, right? Your pelvic bone is bent. Usually, this is much more relaxed posture sitting than standing. So don't be defensive. If comments or insults are directed at you and your team, you do not need to respond to these, in fact. So if they are being defensive or insulting to you or a team member, I wouldn't even respond. This is not something that we need to give our energy to, right? So you want to remember, this is not about you, and you don't have to try to argue or convince them otherwise. You work with them on the solutions that you're building in order for us to resolve the issue. Know where you are, know where your skill set is, know where your rapport is and how you've connected with them and how you're helping them become productive about the chief issue, their needs that are not being unmet, right? And use a regulated low voice. Don't get loud. Don't try to yell at a screaming person. It doesn't work. Try calmly. Talk calmly in an average tone, right? If I'm whispering again, that's going to set someone off, right? But if I'm talking in an average tone and I'm telling them, when you're speaking this loud, I really can't hear you, and I'm sure you can't hear me either. That makes a big difference. You want to talk in a regulated and low tone. You also want to be respectful while you're setting your own limits and calling for help. So again, you don't want someone to place hands on you. You want to maintain that arm length away, right? You also want to be in that zone of influence, but at the same time, you want to be able to call for help, right? Knowing when your walkie-talkie's around or texting on your phone or just popping your head in and saying, let me call for help really quickly. I think it's very important that we help you resolve this issue as quickly as possible. Treat everyone involved with dignity and respect, including your colleagues, or if this person has a family. You need to treat everyone with dignity and respect, and you want to respond selectively. Again, we talked about abusive things, right? Like if they have an abusive question, why are all your counselors that word that I tried to use asterisks and dollar signs for. This sort of language should not get a response, right? You don't really need to answer this question. So I would definitely advise you don't get there, because this is not going to be very productive, right? So what you want to talk about is, again, about the person, right? They're making it about you, or they're making it about your team. And what you want to do is bring that back to them. So when I hear you say that, it shows me that you're really not happy with your counselor, right? And now you've made it about them. Now you made it about their response. So and remember, staying honest. Don't promise them something that you cannot deliver. That's going to escalate them really fast. Explain the limits and the rules in a firm but respectful tone. Give them the choices. And when you give them their choices, give them that safe, what you can do, choice first. So usually if it's, if you continue to pound your fists on the table, that shows me that you're really upset, but it also shows that you could harm someone. I'd like for you to maybe take your hands off the table and have a seat. That could be one of the things that can happen from here. Otherwise, if you keep doing that, we'd have to call the police. So now, do you see how I set a limit and a rule, but at the same time, I give him the positive choice first? I said, so I reminded him that he can stop doing what he's doing, he or she, and have a seat. And that's great, and we can continue. But if that behavior continues, we'll have to do something about it. But I didn't leave it at that, right? That could be seen as a no choice. But reminding them sometimes of what their choices are, that you can have a seat. You don't have to pound the desk, right? In a safe, genuine, respectful way that shows dignity for themselves, can really heighten their ability to hear what you're saying and take that choice. And you want to represent external control, the rules and the policies, as the institution, as HomeFirst, rather than you, right? It's not you asking them to do this. It's the policy. It's the program. It's the manager. It's Renee, right? You've got to really think about the institution and really making about, this is just kind of what's going on, rather than this is what you're asking them to do. That's going to help you be seen as an ally and help them build rapport with you and connect with you. Emphasize with feelings, but not with behavior. For example, I understand that you have every right to feel angry, but it's not okay for you to threaten me or my team, right? And now I'm emphasizing with feeling, but I'm not yelling at them. I'm not saying, hey, don't yell at my team, don't, right? I'm not getting to the same level where they are. I'm maintaining my own sense of self, and I'm telling them, I understand you have every right to feel angry. It's not okay for you to threaten me, right? And trust your instincts. If you assess or feel that the de-escalation is not working, stop right away and get help, right? Get into your walkie-talkie or ask for a moment to step away again. Take a look at bystanders in your presence. You should always take a look at what else is going on around you. Never turn your back on someone, right? Because again, you don't know what's happening behind your head. They could be running towards you with a fist or with a weapon. So get help, right? Remember your responsibility to keep the safety of others in the area and also to keep yourself safe first. So retreat. So asking, I'm going to need you to step out. But if they're not stepping out, finding a way to get through the double doors yourself. Asking everyone, hey, I need you guys to clear the lobby. Maybe even pressing that radio button and saying, this looks like this is going further and I'm really going to need some assistance. So would you mind if I call a colleague, right? So you're having this conversation over the walkie-talkie. You're having other people hear you without really needing to stop and say, hey, I need help, right? Which could further escalate the situation. So taking a look at what's going on around you. So here's a few things we've reviewed. So at this time, let's review the crisis de-escalation tips. These are from Crisis Prevention Intervention. You'll see these de-escalation tips in the CPI training. So I'm going to put myself at pause and I'm going to ask that the facilitator take over from here and read over each tip. So have everyone read over the tip and the little tidbit underneath it and share a little bit about kind of what you heard about this from this training and from me today and how you can put this in action. There's about 10 tips here. So facilitator, please put me on pause so you can have this discussion. Okay, so the next, I hope that was helpful. Again, these de-escalation tips are very helpful. A lot of what we've reviewed today is summarized in them, but I think it's very helpful to see them in that whole impactful way. Next thing that I want you to think about is the functional levels of the brain. I'm going to bring that handout here, so you should have this in front of you as well. This is derived from Dr. Bruce Perry and formatted by Dr. Christy Grant from the Child Trauma Org Clinic. And we do have permission to use this in all of our trainings. So this is something that I want you to sort of think about when someone is escalating and kind of what they're going through. So when someone's stress is really high, right? They're in that fight, flight, freeze, flock, right? Gather together. Survival instincts are being triggered. They're in their brain stem. They're in the very lower part of their brain where their heart rate, their blood pressure, their breathing, their temperature is controlled, right? These rapid reactions are trying to think of situations as good or bad, as safe or unsafe, are trying to see you as a friend or a foe, or judge right from wrong, right? It goes back to that old instincts of be eaten or eat yourself. Right? Fight or flight. When we're in high stress response, we go on to the very survival part of our brain. We can't really do much here, right? Besides just regulate and do well. We can't really think through thoughts and pair things together. So on the back side of this worksheet, this shows us that in that massive stress response, when we're in our brainstem, that's usually the norm for a 0 to 1 year old, right? But if you're in that sense, the feeling that you're feeling is terror. Right? You've lost a sense of time and you're really aggressive and you're really in a fight stage. So what's going to help you get out of it? Here's some examples of de-escalating strategies that are going to help you get out of it. Is time, right? It's presence without threat, minimal or so no eye contact, fewer words, a reassurance of safety, a reflection and inaction, being mindful, showing authentic empathy, and mentalizing, right? But if they continue to be in an area where there's yelling or chaos, intimidating eye contact, someone who moves too close to their face or blocks their passage, that's really going to escalate them. And that sign that here, this is someone blowing up, right? So if you don't want them to blow up, don't do these things, right? You want to move away from that and into this cool blue escalation zone of reflection or rest. Right? And the way you do that is to support them and be calm and talk about all of those de-escalation techniques that we've been talking about. Next, let's say, you've been able to calm them. You've been able to use good soothing words and soothing tone. Remember, it's not about the words, it's about the tone in our body. You are getting them to be in a reactive and reflective state in their diencephalon, right? In their kind of their midbrain. This is still where they're wary and cautious. They still might be fearful of you, right? But this is where our circadian rhythm, our heart rhythm starts to fall into full flex. You might start to feel tired, right? We have a lot of reflexive behaviors. We start to think about our appetite and our motor movements and our states, right? So in this area, which actually is across two different areas here in our diencephalon is across that fight or flight. So still the massive stress response is quite big. We're in that freeze or flight zone. We're either resistant in that resistance mode or that defiance mode. Our sense of time might be minutes or seconds or hours to minutes, right? We're still fearful or alarmed. Our limbic system, our diencephalon still being triggered. That's anyone for a normal heart functioning age, right? This is fine for a 1 to 3 year old. Right, or a 3 to 8 year old. Our heart rate's still very high, right? It's nowhere near being controlled. And in these stages, having someone who has confidence in their presence without engagement, few quiet words, side-to-side positionality, again, that safe, open body language, small eye contact, minimal eye contact, reassuring safety in groups, helping members regulate each other is really helpful. Using pauses in between phrases, showing no sense of hurry or urgency, gesturing or creating genuine empathy and support when they're struggling to find context, right? Using nods or sighs can really help this person find a sense of balance and their own baseline. Next, if you're able to help them de-stress and de-escalate through that, you can get them to their thinking brain, right? Their concrete and emotional brain in their subcortex, their limbic system, where now we're emotional, right? Our sensitivity is being driven towards our pleasure and response section. We really take a look at our attachment history, right? How do you represent what do you represent to them in the long history of social workers or case managers or service providers that they've seen, right? And those prevailing perspectives really come to mind, which means things can still be positive, where they can go, they're still very vigilant in that stages though, right? Their limbic system, they're alert. They're now alert. They might be thinking within hours, maybe a day or two. Again, their heart rate's a little high still, 90 to 100. Their thinking is quite concrete, right? They were emotional before. Now their thinking is concrete but emotional, right? We're in that limbic system right here. So this is where you're using quiet words. You're using a brief narration of what's happening. You're reassuring them of their safety. You're reassuring them so that they can, asking them to adhere to agreements that they might have made with you. You're limiting your eye contact. You're still using very calm voice, right? All of those de-escalation skills still work. And also for someone who's here, for someone who is in that fight or flight stage, having them talk and vent, you're really asking them to move here. When you're telling them or asking them, what was that like for you? Tell me, how did you feel? You're asking them to shoot from their midbrain to the fight or flight, or their very cautious sense of self to their limbic system. You're asking them to talk about their emotional state. What drove them to make certain decisions? What drove them to experience what they did or be in the situation they're in? You're asking them to tell you a story of themselves. You're asking them to think on a higher level of brain, which is very important. It means that their stress response is good. That means they're starting to build that trust with you. And now you can work with them to help regulate what's going on with them. Right? And the very last, our neocortex, our prefrontal cortex, this is our reflective and responsive brain, where we're calm, we're collaborative, we're creative, we are aware of our body fully, right? We are, usually it takes over someone 15 years old to be in that state. Usually 70 to 90 heart rate is very important. And this is not only we're thinking about everything that's going on, we're now extended to our future. We're thinking about not just tomorrow, but next week, not just next week, but next month, things like that. And this is where we're resting, right? This is our baseline. This is where we want to be. This is where they're safe, they're mindful, they're relaxed, they're focused, they're on practicing transformation, they're abiding by their agreements, everything is going well, right? Not everyone can be here or can be here for a long period of time. So our expectations have to be, again, for individuals experiencing trauma. So our expectations have to be set correctly. And we can't say, oh, you're not here. You're escalated, right? We don't know what escalated looks like for someone. So you really have to take a look at how much massive stress response they're going through and where they are. I would say someone who's in their limbic brain, who's able to talk with you and really function, and you're able to get their needs met, that's great, right? That's not someone who's escalating. But again, you want to watch out for those early warning signs and those red alert triggers, so that you can really know when someone is in their brainstem or in that fight or flight, good or bad, really determining how they're going to respond in a situation. Again, we want to make sure to remove the lethality of the situation, and we want to make sure to have all things resolved in the most safest way for everyone, hence the goal of our de-escalation, right? So again, if you have any questions, feel free to put me on pause. Actually, that's the end of our training. So your questions are welcome. I would like you to address those questions to your facilitator currently, and feel free to bring them to Teresa as well. She does crisis de-escalation as part of the CPI training. If you haven't had that yet, that's also very important and mandatory training. Again, I thank you for attending today and paying good attention. I hope I kept your attention today, and I look forward to training with you some more at another time. Thank you.